Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us here at our event, Protecting Sacred Landscapes from Juristac to Medicine Lake. My name is Alice Kaufman, and I am the Legislative Advocacy Director for Green Foothills. We are honored to be presenting this event tonight together with the Amah Mutsun Tribal Band. And now I'm going to turn it over to Julissa Lopez, who is a tribal youth leader of the Amah Mutsun Tribal Band. Julissa has been involved with tribal initiatives, including the Amah Mutsun Stewardship Corps, the Campaign to Protect Juristac, and the removal of the mission bell at UC Santa Cruz. Julissa is also a third-year student in the social psychology Ph.D. program at the University of Michigan, and her research around the negative effects of stereotypical Native American imagery has been cited in the fight to end the use of Native mascots. So welcome, Julissa, and please take it away.
Thank you, Alice. Mishmin relatives. I'm honored to be here and excited to hear our four panelists who will be teaching us about the cultural and ecological importance of two sacred landscapes in California, Juristac and Medicine Lake, and about the threats posed by industrial development to these important places. I know that people are joining us here today from all over the region, but wherever our feet are right now, we are standing on Indigenous land. Most likely, the land was stolen from tribes of the area. I would encourage everyone to learn about the history of the land you're standing on and to acknowledge and support your local Indigenous communities, both past and present. Our tribe, the Amah Mutsun Tribal Band, is comprised of the descendants of the indigenous peoples who were taken to Mission San Juan Bautista and Mission Santa Cruz in the Central Coast. Today, we will be talking about Juristac, the most sacred grounds of our tribe. Juristac is located in the heart of our ancestral homeland. Our tribe is honored to present this event today with Green Foothills and with our other co-hosts, the Department of Anthropology and Social Change, California Institute of Integral Studies, Silicon Valley Youth Climate Strike, Center for Biological Diversity, Greenbelt Alliance, ACLU of Northern California, Friends of Juristac, South Bay Indigenous Solidarity, First Unitarian Church of San Jose, and the Social Science Department at the Gavilan Community College. All of the co-hosts of this event provided crucial support in getting the word out to make this event successful. Thanks to the combined efforts of all of our organizations, we have over 700 guests registered for the event. Some quick housekeeping notes. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the panel, so please type any questions you have for the panelists into the chat box. We will be recording the event today and releasing it so that you can share it with others. Now I'm honored to introduce Morningstar Gali, a member of the Ajumawi Band of the Pit River Tribe. Morningstar Gali is the project director of Restoring Justice for Indigenous Peoples. She is also the tribal water organizer for Save California Salmon and serves as the California Tribal and Community Liaison for the International Indian Treaty Council. Morningstar continues to lead large-scale actions while helping organize Native cultural, spiritual, scholarly, and political gatherings throughout California. She is deeply committed to advocating for Indigenous sovereignty issues, such as missing and murdered Indigenous women, climate justice, gender justice, and sacred sites protection on behalf of the tribal and intertribal communities in which she was raised. Welcome, Morningstar.
Thank you so much for having me. Okay, there we go. Chimi Sanwi, Morningstar Gali, Ilik Atage Chi, Ma'achmawi is Chi. My name is Morningstar Gali, and I am Ajumawi Band of Pit River, and it is an honor to be here with all of you today. I want to thank Chairman Lopez and all of the Amah Mutsun relatives that are here. I am currently on the territories of the Miwok, Maidu, and Nishinan peoples here in Sacramento, California. And I will just start off by acknowledging that this is a time of year where we would generally be at Medicine Lake, that we would be in the Medicine Lake Highlands, taking part in ceremonies. And the first time that I took part in these ceremonies, I was it was a cleansing ceremony after my father had passed away. And so we would go to Medicine Lake and we would bathe in the lake, and even, you know, the English word for the lake is, the English translation is recognizing the significance and the importance of the lake there. And so I am home recovering from testing positive for COVID-19, but my relatives were still up there practicing social distancing, you know, still making that commitment to be there at the lake the way that our ancestors always have. So just to give some background on where Medicine Lake is located, this is known that we are in the Modoc National Forest, the Klamath National Forest, and the Shasta Trinity National Forest. So we are right below the Lava Beds National Monument area within Modoc and Siskiyou counties. And Medicine Lake Highlands is part of the Cascade Range, located within northeastern California, and north of Mount Shasta and south of the Klamath Falls. And so there has been an effort for decades now of my tribe fighting to protect the Medicine Lake Highlands. And so there's been discussion of the geothermal development in the 1990s, incited by a push of local tribes and supporting organizations that pushed for recognition of the Medicine Lake area as a place of cultural importance worthy of protection. In 1999, the keeper of the National Register formally recognized Medicine Lake Highlands as eligible for the National Register of the 21 interconnected sites located both in and near the Medicine Lake caldera as the Medicine Lake Area Traditional Cultural Places District. And so we'll be discussing that. What is a TCD? What is a TCP? You know, I think that in the discussion of sacred places and sacred place protection, that there's this notion that it's just this one area for this, that it's just this one region that people utilized and would go to pray, but we know that that's not true, that these are actually seen as districts, that these are sites. And so these were 21 interconnected sites that we were able to get that, that protection for. So in discussing the place of cultural significance, Medicine Lake Highlands is an important cultural and spiritual place to the Pit River tribe, Karuk tribes, and Wintu tribes, the Shasta Indian Nation, Modoc and Klamath tribes of Oregon. The area is part of Pit River tribes and Modoc Indians ancestral territories. It has powerful healing powers, and it is a place for healing, for those ceremonies to take place. And so within our creation stories, for Pit River peoples, the creator and his son bathed himself in the lake after creating the earth and left those natural healing properties within the lake. And so as Pit River peoples, we utilize the lake. As I mentioned earlier, I was 17. It was after my father had passed, and I took part in that ceremony where we go and we dive into the lake, and there are instructions that were given in terms of diving into the lake and cleansing ourselves in that time. So these aren't places that can be replicated. These aren't places that can, if the site was to be built on as proposed, there's not another place that we could just go to that we would be able to follow in those instructions in the same manner. So next slide, please. And so here is some information, the geological and ecological information of the volcanic Medicine Lake Highlands. Where it sits is within a 4-mile wide and 6-mile long area. And the water is acquired through snow melt and groundwater. It's plentiful within obsidian and pumice. So a lot of the obsidian from that area, from Glass Mountain next door, it was traded with tribes throughout our region. And you can see when you look at various trade route maps of how our obsidian there was traded and utilized all throughout Northern California, Oregon, and Nevada. And then there's some information on some of the vegetation there. So here's some information that we provided, or that was provided in the TCP, the Traditional Cultural Property, in terms of the quick facts and what was included. So I apologize, I'm kind of rushing through this because I do realize that I'm limited on time now. But if anyone else wanted this information, we can make it available. I did put into the chat the updates where it was in April 2019 last year that members of our tribe traveled up to Seattle, Washington to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And this has been a constant ongoing case that we have been involved in the legal fight. And so we were able to declare victory on this, to where our tribe was able to, the 3-judge panel was able to rule in favor of Pit River Tribe against the Bureau of Land Management efforts to develop our lake there. So I apologize. I think that there was, the formatting was lost when I sent this over, but here is information on determination of the eligibility processes. And so, it was through our efforts of creating a tribal coalition with Pit River Tribe, with the nearby surrounding tribes within the region. And, we had to take a stand against the U.S. Forest Service, against the Bureau of Land Management. It was at the time Calpine Corporation that was fighting for development. And it was a process too where, having to determine for the TCP, having to create this documentation for the historic properties. And, it was interesting because when the Trump administration came into power, because this project has been touted as a green energy project, and so there was greenwashing that was involved in that. It was a bit under the radar. Like, this isn't an oil project. This isn't a proposed development project, but this is very much still utilizing those resources, those natural resources, in terms of the geothermal energy extraction, and would very much continue to pollute our lake. So this is just some information that we provided on the benefits and limitations of the cultural significance. I should say that I was the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for Pit River Tribe for 3.5 years. And I was the first tribal and first female person to do so, to be in that position. And that work is now continuing on through the new TIPO, Natalie Forrest, that has been there for the past few years. And so again, we came up on issues in terms of confidentiality issues that the tribe, of course, didn't want some of the places listed within the district to be listed individually, because then that can, that creates a fear of exposing them in these individual sites to harm. And I will add that, it was my personal experience of being involved and feeling the connection to the Medicine Lake Highlands, which really, you know, led to the volunteer and community work that I've continued to do in terms of protection of sacred places and protection of sacred landscapes there. And so here's a photo of the lake, Satitla, Obsidian Knife Lake, Medicine Lake, where it's considered to be in the remote corner of northeastern California. And again, as I mentioned earlier, although you know, there were restrictions in place with COVID, that our family members, our tribal members were still up there this year. They were still there to gather, to swim in the lake, and to participate in the ceremonies, and did that as safely as they possibly could. That the lake has that much cultural significance in terms of us being able to gather there. So this just, this paragraph talks about the archaeological evidence that has indicated inhabitation for over 10,000 years within the highlands, that we've always upheld it as one of our most sacred places within the region. I do want to apologize because I know I'm a bit over on time, and as I said, I am recovering from COVID at this time, so I do apologize to all of you. So this was one of the first demonstrations that we held, and this was at Calpine Corporation in San Jose, California, at their corporate offices. We held this back in 2006, and we held a series of demonstrations outside the Calpine headquarters. And it was very effective in that we were able to really shame them out, and had a very visible presence of many tribal members, many coalitions, many local indigenous peoples that held that demonstration in front. We served them, our chairwoman at the time served an eviction notice to the Calpine Corporation, saying that we no longer wanted them in the Sacred Medicine Lake Highlands, and that they were given notice of that. And it was shortly after that demonstration that we were able to physically, they moved to Texas, and their headquarters is now based in Texas, and they are actually not the lead corporation for the project anymore. And so now, you know, even though they do not have the backing of Calpine, the Bureau of Land Management, interestingly, has still chosen to move forward on the project. And in terms of the lease issue, I did include that information in the chat. And so this provides information on protecting the land, the federal public land managers, USFS and BLM that were charged with stewardship of the Medicine Lake Highlands, although we know that it has always been our peoples that have stewarded the land, and they had approved the energy leases, which would drastically change the landscape and the proposed geothermal energy development. These were the findings of the environmental assessment that determined geothermal mining in the Medicine Lake region would result in the release of toxins such as hydrogen sulfide, the arsenic, mercury, and other carcinogens into the environment. And so I should also add that the water from the Medicine Lake Highlands is tunneled through to the Fall River, which is tunneled to the Fall River to the Pitt River. The Pitt River goes into the Sacramento River into the Bay Delta, and ultimately into the San Francisco Bay. And so that if there was contamination that happened at that level, then that is our entire major waterways throughout Northern California that would be affected. And so we are saying that, you know, not just for protection for Native peoples, for our tribal peoples, but for all peoples that would be affected by this. So free, prior, and informed consent is extremely important to include within this conversation and within our fight for protection, that we were never consulted. In the geothermal projects, we never gave our consent to such projects, and we have actively been fighting this case and stating that the land, those leases for the 66 square miles were illegally obtained. And so this was in their own words, where Calpine Corporation in its filings with the CEC, the California Energy Commission, admitted the irreparable damage that geothermal development would inflict on the cultural and spiritual uses of the sacred Medicine Lake Highlands by Indigenous peoples throughout Northern California and Oregon. And then possible remedies, present day human rights violations against Native peoples and their sacred environments can be remedied by using environmental toxicity and psychological assessment data, as well as morbidity data, to advocate for legislation that will protect the health and religious rights of these communities. And so I think that's something that we're absolutely seeing right now, right? That's so, like we just saw it with the whole mascot issue and the APA, the psychological effects and potential harm that can be caused. And so there we are. I just wanted to close by saying Sasulai. Thank you to Chairman Lopez. Thank you to everyone that is involved in the Protect Juristac efforts. And then this is some of our tribal members that have been involved in the continuing fight. Some of them have now passed on, and it really is an honor to be included in this presentation. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Morningstar. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Alice Kaufman. Alice has been an advocate with Green Foothills since 2012 and has been Legislative Advocacy Director since 2017. She oversees the organization's advocacy campaigns in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties, including the campaigns to protect Coyote Valley, Juristac, the Redwood City Cargill Salt Ponds, and other hillside and bayshore open space areas. Alice holds a JD from the University of California, Hastings College of Law. Welcome, Alice.
Thank you so much, Julissa, and thank you, Morningstar, and thanks to everyone again for being here tonight. Just a quick note, I'm noticing that people are putting a lot of great comments and questions in the chat. I just want to remind everybody, the default is that it only goes to the panelists. So if you want everybody who's here tonight, and we said we have like over 700 people registered. If you want everyone to see your comments, you need to switch from panelists to panelists plus attendees. So just a note there. All right, and then I want to switch gears now and talk about a sacred Native American landscape that's right here in Santa Clara County. Okay, so this is Juristac. This is right here. It's just south of Gilroy and north of San Juan Bautista. It's the southern tip of Santa Clara County. It's a 6,500 acre site. It's known to some as Sargent Ranch, but it is known to the Amah Mutsun tribal band as Juristac. And this is a bird's eye view of Juristac looking to the west. This is Highway 101 in the foreground. And that is Monterey Bay back there. And this is roughly the boundary of Juristac, going about around like that. This is the spine of the Santa Cruz Mountains. So you can sort of see, this is a really great angle at which to see the connection between the Santa Cruz Mountains, how Juristac lies right at the foot of the Santa Cruz Mountains, and that it's the connection for any wildlife that are migrating either south over this way to the Gabilan Range or east over this way to the Diablo Range. And as you can see, this area, Juristac, is almost completely pristine. There's hardly any roads, no buildings. Dr. Stuart Weiss, who's coming later after me, is going to tell us about the wildlife and ecology of Juristac. And Chairman Valentin Lopez is going to tell us about its cultural and spiritual importance. And but what I'm going to tell you about is how Juristac is under threat from a sand and gravel mining proposal. So again, this is the outline of Juristac, of this particular site. And this is a diagram of the sand and gravel mining proposal. So again, let me orient you. We've got Highway 101 going here. And the city of Gilroy is up to the north, and the Pajaro River runs right along the foot of the hills. And then this is Sargent Creek that runs right through where the mining operation is going to be. And in case you need a visual of what an open pit sand and gravel mine would look like, here's a photo of an existing quarry that is not too far away from Juristac. And just so that you appreciate the scale, those little things down there at the bottom of the mine, those are trucks. So you can see from the scale how huge this is. It's hundreds of feet deep. And that's about how deep the pits at Juristac would be. So going back to this visual, this is called the Sargent Ranch Quarry, and it's being proposed by the current majority landowner, a Southern California-based company called the Debt Acquisition Company of America. They acquired this in bankruptcy after the previous owner filed for bankruptcy, and so they're proposing the sand mine as a way to make money from the land. Now, according to the project description that is on file with the County of Santa Clara, this mine would consist of 4 pits, 1, 2, this is sort of the combined 3 and 4, each of them hundreds of feet deep. A processing plant here, 14 acres, that's about the size of 10 football fields. Roads here's a service road for the trucks to haul the sand and gravel away. The overburden stockpile is the mining waste to the rock that they can't use, so they just dump it. And the total area that would be like the footprint of the mine, the area that would be like physically disrupted, is about 320 acres. Again, in football fields, that's about 240. But as you can see, just sort of like from where the road is and everything like that, the area that would be disrupted is much bigger than just what the footprint of the mine is. And the mine is projected to operate for 30 to 50 years. So that's a long time for this kind of heavy industrial operation to be going on. And about 40 to 50 million tons of material would be excavated in total. And the operation would pump about 76,000 gallons of groundwater per day for use in quarry operations. And there would be hundreds of truck trips a day along Highway 101. According to the project description, at peak operation, there could be over 800 truck trips each day. Then after the mining operation is over, 30 years, 50 years, whenever that is, the operator would dump the waste rock and overburden back into the pits to stabilize the quarry walls and plant grass seeds on top. This is called reclamation. It's all that's required under state law for a mine operator to do after a mine closes. And now I want to show you, here's what Juristac looks like today. This is the location of 2 of the quarry pits on these hillsides. This is Sargent Creek, here where you can see this green line. The proposed mining pits and the overburden pile location would be there on the right. So that previous slide was Upper Sargent Creek. This is Lower Sargent Creek. So this is where you would have some more of the mining pits. And so you can imagine the disruption that's going to be done to this landslide. And then going back to this diagram, the mine poses a very serious threat to wildlife movement. As I showed you in the first slide, one of the first slides, Juristac is at the very foot of the Santa Cruz Mountains, and any animals that want to migrate out of the Santa Cruz Mountains to get to other open space areas, they really only have 2 ways to get out. One of them is Coyote Valley, which is north of here, just south of San Jose, and the other one is Juristac. And there's a limited number of areas where animals can cross 101, and one of them is right here, where Tar Creek goes underneath 101, and you can see, of course, how close that is to the mining operation. So that's really going to impact the path that the animals have to take to go out. And also animals avoid human noise and activity. An open pit mining operation is incredibly loud. If you've ever heard a backhoe or other heavy equipment operating in a remote area, you know how loud that is. You know, we can hear it from miles around if you're in a remote area because it's so quiet. All right, so what can we do? Well, now that I've depressed you all completely, so our position is simple. The Debt Acquisition Company of America, the landowner, needs to abandon their proposal and instead sell all the land for conservation. There's public and private funding that's available to purchase this land because it's considered so critical for wildlife movement. And there are conservation agencies and organizations that are standing ready to purchase the land. But the landowners apparently prefer to pursue the mining operation rather than doing that. So what you can do to help is to join with us in telling Santa Clara County not to approve the permits for this mine. And here's what the process will look like. Before the mine can be approved, the County of Santa Clara must approve an environmental impact statement that will analyze the impacts of the mine. It's called an EIR. And the EIR will examine all the potential environmental impacts of the mine. As part of the EIR process, the public is allowed to submit comments on the mining project. This is our opportunity to make our voices heard. The county is in the process of completing the EIR for the Sergeant Ranch Quarry project. It's expected to be released this fall. And so we would ask everybody to sign up. You can sign up on the Green Foothills website. We're going to be providing that information on a slide at the end of our event. And if you do that, then you'll receive our notification emails when the EIR comes out and you can make public comment. And then after the EIR comment period is over, the county will take several months to assimilate all the comments. They're required by state law to respond to every comment. That can take a long time if there's a lot of them. And then there will be several meetings at the Planning Commission, most likely also at the Board of Supervisors afterwards, which they'll discuss the project and ultimately they'll vote on whether to approve the permit. So we will need to show up virtually if necessary, if we're still in virtual mode then. We'll need to show up to the meetings of the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors when this project comes before them, because they are the ones who will ultimately be making the decision about whether to approve this mining operation. And then there's other things you can do right now to help spread the word and make more people aware of this. And again, we're going to be giving you information on how to do that at the end of the event. So remember, when we stand together, we can make a difference. Thank you for supporting the fight to protect Juristac, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Alice. That's really important information, even though it is depressing. I hope it, moves people to action. I was definitely feeling that throughout the slides, so I'm glad we ended on a strong note. Well, now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Stuart Weiss, Chief Scientist at the Creekside Center for Earth Observation. Stu has wide-ranging research experience in conservation and population biology, microclimate characterization, and statistical analysis. He worked for over 15 years at the Center for Conservation Biology at Stanford University, has authored more than 25 scientific publications, and has served as principal investigator for more than 50 grants and contracts, including U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, California Energy Commission, and Silicon Valley Land Conservancy. Welcome, Stu.
Okay, so I am going to be talking about wildlife and water at Juristac. This is a picture looking at the crest of the Santa Cruz Mountains with fog bank rolling over and some beautiful serpentine rocks in the foreground. One of the most unusual features is this tar spring. It was literally tar bubbling up out of the ground. This is well away from the quarry area, but I think it's just emblematic of what a unique spot Juristac is. It also happens to host the only oil wells in Santa Clara County related to this tar spring. There's about 65 acres of serpentine grassland, very unique native dominated grasslands. But it's not bay checker spot butterfly habitat. It's too small and isolated, and it's also well outside the quarry footprint, but it's also a really important conservation target for the whole piece of land. Now, getting to the wildlife, Puma is one of our flagship species here. The population in the Santa Cruz Mountains is at high risk from small population size, especially because of inbreeding that has been documented through a recent genetic study of California Puma. And this population needs immigrants. You have to be able to get into the Santa Cruz Mountains. These are generally juvenile males that disperse into the area and stake out a territory and fight off the resident males and then add their genes to the population. And there's tracking data showing that Juristac is used by Puma thanks to the Santa Cruz Puma project. So most recently, the North Central Coast population is now under consideration by California Department of Fish and Wildlife for threatened status under the California Endangered Species Act. Thank you to the Center for Biological Diversity and all the other people who pushed this. And as such, it's given interim protection as a threatened species until the decision is made to list it or not, which is supposed to be about a 1-year process. And there's actually, be very surprised if it didn't get listed as threatened if they stick to the best available science. And that genetics paper that came out last year was really the key to documenting the threat to this population. Another flagship wildlife species is the badger. There's an isolated population in the Santa Cruz Mountains that's also at risk from small population size. Again, inbreeding is a real problem, and it needs immigration. And unfortunately, badgers are not very vehicle smart. There have been a fair number of roadkill on Highway 101 in various stretches. And, you know, badgers are like really kind of mean, vicious weasels, even though they look kind of cute. And they also know that they can fight off anything except perhaps an 18-wheeler or a car bearing down them at night. But this is one of the key places in and out of the Santa Cruz Mountains for badger. So all of the studies that have been done on landscape linkages in California have really zeroed in right here on Juristac. This is from the Santa Clara County Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. 3 linkages are recognized going through Juristac. Statewide analyses, you know, all roads into the Santa Cruz Mountains from the south lead through Juristac. Very well documented, and there's pretty extensive wildlife studies that have been done in the area. Lastly, the Conservation Lands Network, which is a regional vision for the Bay Area, tagged Juristac as areas that ensure a connected network of lands, i.e. without areas like Juristac, we have a disconnected network and all of the issues that wildlife faces as small isolated populations. So in the big picture, there's only 2 semi-intact linkages between the Diablo Range and the Santa Cruz Mountains. And perhaps it'd be better to say tenuous and semi-intact. And Coyote Valley, where we had a great victory in just this last year. And then down at the Pajaro at Juristac. And there's only one to the Gavilan Range, and that's across Chittenden Gap. And again, that goes right through Juristac. So we really have to ask ourselves the question about, is it really a wise thing to put a large industrial complex in a critical wildlife and landscape linkage? I mean, if we're really serious about conserving the tenuous connectivity we have, probably, you know, a death by 1,000 cuts, and this is a pretty large cut. And we also need to consider the cumulative impacts of many projects ranging from high-speed rail to highway expansion on Highway 25 and 101. So it's not just Juristac, it's what's happening in that area from numerous projects. So I'm sure you've all seen the coyote and badger video that was caught by the Peninsula Open Space Trust video. This is not right at Juristac, but it's in that Pajaro wildlife linkage. So we're very pleased to have had a viral video taken in the area. And these little red outlines are the various phases. And if we compare it to where we have good wildlife crossings, here's the Pajaro River in black. Here is Tar Creek and also Tick Creek. This is basically going to form an arc that cuts off the best available crossings of Highway 101. And this doesn't even show the haul roads and the conveyor belts and all of the other activity that Alice referenced, and the noise and the lights and the truck traffic and everything else that's going to be taking place in here. So there's also steelhead trout in the area. The Pajaro River steelhead run is in really poor shape. Tar Creek has supported steelhead in the past, and right now it's unknown status. And the Pajaro River is really, the run is in the shape where every fish matters. So Tar Creek runs right by that overburden pile, and they're going to claim that a 150-foot buffer is enough to protect the creek. So there's some fish issues here. The California red-legged frog is listed as threatened by both the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And Sargent Creek itself supports red-legged frogs, a very unusual stream-dwelling population. So the red-legged frogs used to be all over the lowlands and the marshes and vernal pools and in some of the streams, and now they're largely relegated to networks of stock ponds and small water bodies in the uplands. Finding one in a creek like Sargent Creek is actually pretty unusual, and it seems like there's a fair number of red-legged frogs. And the ponds on the property also support frogs as well. So this is going to be a major issue. Lastly, I want to talk about watershed values. So Sargent Creek is, distinct watershed down at the end of Santa Cruz Mountains. It's 1,269 acres, and it's the focus of the quarry activity. Flows directly into the lower Pajaro River. It's estimated to provide hundreds of acre feet of groundwater recharge and runoff in its intact state. That's very high quality water. And the recharge provides summer base flow in Sargent Creek, which is what's supporting the red-legged frogs. And literally putting pits that are hundreds of feet deep on either side of the creek, even if you're avoiding the creek corridor, is gonna just end of integrity for this watershed. So this is going to be another major part of the draft DIR that is going to be extensively commented on. And with that, I will stop my share and hand it back to the moderator.
Thank you, Stu. So now I'd like to introduce Valentin Lopez, one of my favorite people. I'm not biased at all. Chairman of my tribe and the Amah Mutsun tribal band. So Val will actually has served as the chair of the Amah Mutsun tribal band since 2003 and the president of the Amah Mutsun Land Trust since its inception. Valentin is a Native American advisor to the University of California Office of the President on issues related to repatriation. He is also a Native American advisor to the National Alliance on Mental Illness and the Phoebe Hearst Museum of Anthropology. Valentin is actively involved in efforts to restore tribal indigenous knowledge and ensure our history is accurately told. Welcome, Val.
Thank you very much, Julissa. It is an honor and pleasure to be speaking on this panel tonight. I want to give prayers and blessings to Morningstar Gali for joining us here. And I want to wish her a full recovery with her illness of the COVID. And we wish prayers and blessings to their people as well. Our tribe, I want to talk about the sacred sites first, because Morningstar talked a lot about sacred sites, and that is so important. And there's things about sacred sites that many people don't realize, is that, for example, when in 1882, they passed a law outlawing Native American spiritual practices for all tribes, including the Pit River and including the Amah Mutsun. It's outlawed. And it did not become legal again for Native Americans to practice their spiritual traditions and practices until Jimmy Carter signed the Native American Act for the Freedom of Religious Act in 1978. However, Jimmy Carter's act only made it legal for recognized tribes to practice their religion, not unrecognized tribes. So today, whenever the Amah Mutsun holds ceremonies or prayer gatherings, etc., we are technically breaking the law. And every one of the Amah Mutsun are prepared to go to jail on this one. That's rather ridiculous. Other things about our spirituality, whenever the Spaniards came and the missions, they never respected Native American spirituality at all. They thought it was just devil worship and evil, and they tried to make us believe that was the case, that it was evil. You know, for example, there's a mountain there in San Juan Bautista. When you look up to the hill to the south, you'll see a cross there. Well, whenever the missions first came in, there was a large staff from Native Americans, and it was an offering to Creator, thanking Him for these lands, and thanking for bringing us to these lands and giving us a responsibility to take care of them. When the Spanish came, they put their cross there, and we took the cross down, and we put our staff back up, and that happened 3 or 4 times, but it wasn't long before we were outpowered and outnumbered. I want to talk about another site that's important, is Mount Diablo. That means Devil's Mountain. That was a sacred site for many tribes. But they called it Devil Mountain, just to show dominance over the Native Americans and to have it understood that that was theirs. One more final example is the Doctrine of Discovery. The Doctrine of Discovery was part of the papal bulls that was issued, and it was issued in 1493. That encouraged the European Christian nations to go out and discover these new lands and to claim them for their home country, and to Christianize the Indians. And the Native Americans, or the indigenous people, all indigenous people around the world, were to be converted to citizens of that country, and they were to be converted to Christianity. And if they refused, they were to be killed. And so that issue of domination of our spirituality occurred from the very beginning, and that occurred with the papal bulls of 1493. And then later, archaeologists were not interested in Native American spirituality. When you read those archaeological reports, they don't talk about Native American spirituality at all. They were interested in looking for pyramids. They were interested in looking for artifacts. They were interested in looking for perhaps regalia to show voodoo practices, etc. But they never talked about our spirituality and the importance and how long our people have practiced our spiritual ways. That ties in with exactly what happened with Medicine Lake too. You know, the destruction happened not only on Amah Mutsun lands, but it happened on all tribes. And it also happened on all indigenous countries. I'll talk about Juristac now. Juristac is sacred, spiritual, and cultural site. Our ancestors were last on Juristac in 1862. For 160 years, we have not been able to walk on that land, to hold ceremony, to pray, to gather, to take care of our food plants, our medicine plants, our basketry plants, to hold our ceremonies, to keep balance in the four directions. And in that short period of time, the world has transferred enormously. And then in our history, we were, the colonizers that came in, we were subject to three brutal periods of colonization. The Spanish mission period, and then the Mexican period, and then finally the American and California period. All three of those periods were absolutely brutal to all indigenous people of California. In California, our tribe and many of the unrecognized tribes you see today, as well as others, signed a treaty in 1851. And that treaty was to give Native Americans 8.5, the Native Americans that signed that treaty, 8.5 million acres on the within Central California. Not the most desirable land, but it was land, and it was 8.5 million acres spread over 18 reservations. Well, after that treaty was signed by the tribes and then signed by the treaty commissioners, it was sent to Washington, D.C. to be ratified. But when that was happening, the state of California got together and they passed a resolution asking the U.S. Senate and the president to not ratify that treaty. And once that resolution passed, they sent a delegation to lobby on behalf of that, and to ask and to lobby against the signing and ratifying of that treaty. And shortly after that, the President of the United States ordered that the California treaties be sealed for 50 years. And so therefore, that's why we in the Bay Area, all the way south to Santa Barbara, with the exception of the Santa Ynez Chumash near Santa Maria, near Santa Maria, there are no recognized tribes there. It was sabotaged by the state of California and the federal government. Shortly after that, treaty was sealed, the state of California passed a treasury bond to exterminate all California Indians. And today we pass bonds, and that's for the public good, so to speak. Well, supposedly, because it's for schools, for highways, for roadways, waterways, etc. But in this case, it was to exterminate Indians. I guess they consider that the public good. And it's just a tragic, horrific, and shameful history. All three periods were to the California Indians. Our tribe wants to return to Juristac. Our tribe, because we're federally unrecognized, we get no assistance from the federal government, the state government, or city and county governments whatsoever. And we get no protections as well. We learned in 2015, I believe it was, that there was a proposal to do sand and mining gravel at what was then Sergeant Ranch, and we referred to Juristac for thousands of years. We learned that there was a proposal to do sand and gravel mining there, and we immediately asked to meet with the county to do for consultation under a new bill that had just passed. That was AB 52, and allowed consulting prior to release of the draft environmental impact report, so we can state what the cultural concerns were. And we met with the county, and we asked the county to do an ethnographic study. And we pointed them to a lot of the available resources that were out there. And they're few and far between, but they do exist. And we asked them to take a look at that. And at the same time, they talked to elders of our tribe and members of our tribe as part of that ethnographic study. And whenever that study was written, it presented a lot of information about Juristac. And we had to sign a confidentiality agreement with the county and with the property owner, DACA. We signed a confidentiality agreement that we would not share it. And so I can't talk much about that ethnographic study. I wish I could. But all of you are encouraged, once that draft environmental impact report comes out, take a look at that ethnographic study, the information from that ethnographic study that will be within the draft environmental impact report, and you will recognize the importance of Juristac from a cultural and spiritual point of view. Also, very little of the information we shared is going to be in that report as well, because a lot of it is confidential. Because whenever we do share information, there's a lot of folks who want to go and dig up our sites and look for artifacts, or et cetera, look for human remains even. And so we don't share that information. And so that information will not appear on the draft environmental impact report. In the interest of time, I just want to talk about what it would mean if we were to get Juristac back. As I said, we have no tribal lands. If we were to get Juristac back, that would be the first lands that our tribe, had access to, whether that is through ownership or through a conservation easement, whatever it would be. It would be the first time that our people have access to Juristac in 160 years. Our vision for what we would like to happen there is that for our members to have access to go back to Juristac for ceremonies, to restore our ceremonies. Most importantly, when Creator made our creation story tells us that when Creator, at creation, Creator very specifically picked our people to live within our territory and to take care of it, that we were responsible for all living things. And that meant all living things means the air, the wildlife, the fish, the trees, the land, the rocks, everything above in the sky, everything below in the ground. That's our responsibility. And we look at those as relatives because Creator made us. Creator made us. And Creator also made the land. He made those rocks. He made the stars. He made the water, the air. Those were all made by Creator. Therefore, they are our relatives. And that's how our people learn to take care of Mother Earth. Recognize it as a relative. And just as whenever we have a child, a baby, you treat that baby with love, with caring, with patience, with kindness. You teach it and you learn from it. You sing to it, you talk to it. That's the way we have the relationship we have for the land. That's our way of stewarding the land. In 2012, we developed the Amah and Mutsun Land Trust to start restoring our traditional ways of stewardship to the land, and particularly that sacred relationships that we have with all living things. And whenever we developed our land trust, we started talking to other land trusts. And that right there is traditional stewardship. I mean, that right there was stewardship to many, to a lot of those land trusts and owners of land, the national parks, the state parks, the land trust and open space districts. That was their idea. They didn't think of the idea of having a relationship with the land. And so we're talking to a lot of the landowners now about how to get that relationship back. And that's the kind of relationship we want with Juristac. We want to be able to restore our food plants, our medicine plants, our basketry plants. We want to restore our ceremonies. We want to find there's places of power there that we're aware of, and we'd like to return to those places of power. so that whenever we have prayers and needs and stuff like that, we can go to those places of power and be closer to our ancestors and be closer to Creator. We currently have a stewardship court with our Amah Mutsun Land Trust. And we're having a number of our young adults are members of our land trust now. We have approximately 10 land trusts. That's kind of what we can afford now through our land trust, because we do pay them. That's what we can afford with our land trust now. But they're the ones that we're teaching our traditional ways and our traditional knowledge of how to take care of Mother Earth, how to establish those relationships. And we're also doing a lot of other things, like, say, for example, the coast of California. That was a coastal prairie. When you look at the coast of California now, you look at these trees and everything coming in, you go, isn't that beautiful? Well, to us, that's horrible, because those trees that have come in, they're invasives. First comes the shrubs and then come the trees. But that coastal prairie of the central coast of California was one of the most biodiverse landscapes in North America. But once those trees and those shrubs come in, that biodiversity was lost. And so now we are removing trees along the coastal, within the coastal prairie, and that was for the purpose of restoring that that coastal prairie. And so we asked people to, what we would ultimately like for Juristac is to turn it into a tribal park where we can restore our traditional ways of taking care of Mother Earth and all living things, but also where we can do education of our members for the next generations, so that we never forget that knowledge again. And also education for the public, to teach them about the true history of California tribes, the true history of the Amah Mutsun, and to teach them about how to take care of their lands and how to take care of all lands, and to restore those sacred relationships and recognize that first and foremost, the land is sacred and the sacredness must be restored. That's why we must restore prayer and ceremony to these lands, to start restoring that sacredness. That sacredness was forgotten with the coming of all three periods of colonization. They do not look at land as being sacred. They look at it as something to be dominated and controlled and profited off of. And we must stop that. We must not accept that anymore. We must recognize all lands as being sacred, made by Creator. And Creator made them perfect. It is all of our responsibility to maintain that sacredness and that perfect condition that they were given to us. I'd like you to ask you finally to learn about our Amah Mutsun Land Trust and learn how you can support us and learn how you can support Juristac and help us oppose this. I know, Alice is going to talk about I believe Alice is going to talk about a number of ways, but a good way to get started also is to go to protectjuristac.org, and there's a lot of information there about this and ways you can help. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chairman Val. So that concludes our panel. Before we wrap up and do some Q&A, I just wanted to comment that hearing all of these presentations and really hearing Val speak, we've seen the historical trauma and the effects of historical trauma in our community. We've seen the drug addiction, we've seen the high rates of incarceration, we've seen kids having to go to foster care, and that is a direct result of the displacement of our people from our lands. And as soon as the land trust started and my cousin started stewarding the land, we saw a shift in a growth. So I just want to highlight the importance of Juristac to us. It's very, very close to us. So first, I want to thank everyone for joining us and just make that quick comment about, we've gone through a lot of pain and we're ready for the growth. So thank you, everyone. Now we're going to have some time for questions. I'd like to introduce Michelle Gloa, who will be moderating the Q&A today. Michelle is a volunteer with the tribe and a professor of anthropology and social change at the California Institute of Integral Studies, which is co-sponsoring the event tonight. Welcome, Michelle, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you for those comments. Everyone is encouraged to submit questions for the panelists in the chat, and thank you to those who have already submitted questions during the presentations. We'll use as many questions as time allows, sometimes combining similar questions and striving to cover a variety of topics. If you don't hear your particular question, it could be combined with other similar questions. So to start us off, there's a few questions for Morningstar. Why is it called Medicine Lake? I understand the water quality has changed in the last years, but did the lake have any medicinal qualities? And I'll add another question with that as well. Can you comment on how stuck in material archaeology the historic preservation process and agencies can be? How it does not help further understanding of traditional cultural practices and sacred places, and what can be done to advance the Indigenous worldview?
Sure, those are both great questions. So the English name for the lake is Medicine Lake, but our language of Ajumawi, the name for the lake is Satitla, Medicine Knife Lake, and that is because of the obsidian mountain, glass mountain that is next to the lake. And so I'll have to go back and look. I don't know who it was that specifically named it, but we've always known that, you know, for the Medicine Lake Highlands, for the Medicine Lake Caldera area, that yes, the lake has the natural healing properties, that there are, as I mentioned earlier, that this is right below Captain Jack's stronghold, where our relatives went and hid out at a time that they were being hunted down, as Chairman Lopez was mentioning the bounties that were being placed on our heads. And so it was an area that we were able to hide out in, able to continue to practice our ceremonies. And because of the way that the water flows underneath this volcanic area, and because it is of such pristine water quality, that those are the many reasons of why it's named Medicine Lake. In terms of the question of the material archaeology, you know, that's really a clash of two worldviews, right? The Indigenous worldviews and our values of collectively what we hold to be sacred as Indigenous peoples, as we view the world through a collective lens and not through this individualistic lens that has been imposed upon us. And so we see how that is translated in the historic preservation process and through the way that state agencies continue to work through this very narrow lens, right? And so when we are asked to quantify what is sacred to us, and when we are asked, you know, for us to have the burden of proof placed on us as to why these areas are so sacred to us, you know, that's something that we are constantly being challenged with. I think that, you know, I've seen in past years there's a little bit of headway that's been made. I know that recently the presentation that Chairman Lopez was on the mission studies and curriculum that the State Historic Preservation Officer, I saw that she was an attendee of that talk. And so I think that, you know, in recent times, I've had my own experiences recently with, you know, some of the statue removal efforts that State Parks has been more open to knowing that, you know, having collaborative relationships is really key and really is the way to move forward with this. And so that I do hope that, especially with the efforts to protect Juristac, that you know, these officials and those in those elected positions are more open to that and have that understanding of why these places are so significant, and that that burden of proof does not continuously have to be placed upon us for that to happen.
Thank you. Now for a couple questions for Chairman Lopez. Who are the, or what are the organizations, public agencies or private companies that have been in support of the effort to protect Juristac? And if a conservation organization is able to purchase the land from DACA, will the Amah Mutsun be able to return to Juristac, or are there other steps that would be necessary to ensure that access?
Well, I'm old. You better ask that first question again, the first one.
Sure. Who has the tribe been working with? What organizations and Green Foothills, who have you all been working with in terms of organizations, companies, agencies on this effort?
Well, a lot of land trusts, I believe all the land trusts support our efforts within our territory, you know, within our region, support the efforts to protect Juristac. They all want to protect it for its conservation values, as well as its cultural values. But when you asked that question the first time, I kind of got stuck on public agencies, you know, because, for example, the state parks and all of them, state parks, city parks, county parks, I'm not sure that they could take a stand on something political, because that would put them in the political realm, and they're not supposed to do that. So I doubt that any of them would, and if any government entity did step up, that'd be very brave of them, and it'd also be the right thing to do, by the way. And the other ones who supports us, the organizations, I know Green Foothills is a huge, not only a supporter, but a partner. We work side by side with Green Foothills on all our efforts as they, you know, as they fight for the environmental concerns. We fight for the cultural concerns, and they are extremely compatible together. One last word on this. You know, we have a lot of partners who work with us and stuff like that. You know, regarding the stewarding of the lands, we do not deal with other organizations other than environmental organizations. You know, we believe that a lot of the environmental organizations and land trusts and state parks, they want to take care of the land properly. They want, you know, they have the, you know, our responsibility is to take care of Mother Earth and all living things, and that's what they're trying to do. But none of them know how to do it. At least not in the traditional way. So we work with them as partners, or as, you know, as collaborators, and our efforts are to try to teach them how to restore in the traditional way their lands and their relationships.
Thank you. Another question for you, Chairman Lopez. What does Juristac mean?
Juristac translates to place of the big head. And for many California tribes, and I don't know how far north it goes, but I know that the Pumas still have big head dances, and they practice their big head dance, the big head dances and ceremonies today, and I've attended a number of them. But it translates to place of the ceremony. That was our most important and most sacred ceremony.
Okay. A question for you, Alice. Supervisor Wasserman has said that the gravel and sand from the mine will be used for construction in Santa Clara County. Is there any evidence that this is the case? And to combine that with another question, a few folks have asked, why is the company so focused on this location as the site of a quarry? There must be other places to get sand and gravel.
Well, to answer the second question first, the company's focused on this location because this is the land that they own. I mean, they're not a mining company, they're a debt acquisition company. They acquired this land in bankruptcy and they're just looking to profit off of it. So this is what they feel like they can possibly do here. You know, with regard to the first question about will the material be used in Santa Clara County, you know, I would imagine, I mean, it is that this is, what they're mining for is building materials. So building and construction materials. So yeah, you know, to the extent that there will be anything there mined to be used, then I would expect it to be used in Santa Clara County. I mean, to be frank, there is an issue about whether it is going to be economically feasible to even, you know, do mining in this area. Questions have been raised about the quality of the materials of the sand and gravel there, whether it's, you know, what the quality that's really needed in construction, how expensive it's going to be, considering how much excavation they'll have to do to get the actual usable materials out. You know, I'm not a mining expert, so I can't speak to any of that. But, you know, I mean, I've definitely heard questions raised about that. So we're certainly hoping that you know, the analysis by the county will look into that and will examine all of those issues.
Great, thank you. A question for you, Stu. The local puma and badgers are already inbreeding. What is the reason behind the current state of their population numbers? Can you speak to that?
The current state of their population numbers in the Santa Cruz Mountains is largely a matter of the amount of habitat in the Santa Cruz Mountains that's available to them. It's like the Santa Cruz Mountains are perhaps some of the best puma habitat in Western North America. They're just not large enough to support a viable population that's, unless there is some connection to the outside world. With badgers, it's the amount of grassland area available that really limits their population. Both are very wide-ranging species, so they need a lot of room, and there's only so many you can pack into a place like the Santa Cruz Mountains. You know, it wasn't an issue when it was just thoroughly connected to the rest of the state. But now with only two pretty tenuous connections left, we're seeing the inbreeding on the puma, and there are some ongoing studies about the badger population as well.
Okay, this is a general question. What are we up against with the Santa Clara County for Juristac? What is the record of the county approving mining and similar projects?
I'll take that one. You know, it's hard to tell because there hasn't been any project like this, a huge gravel mine like this that's been proposed, let alone whether it's been approved, for as long as I can remember. I mean, Santa Clara County has several existing mines for building materials. There's like at least three that I know of, and you know, there might be more. So there's no shortage of this kind of product in Santa Clara County. And, you know, I mean, the state did an assessment about 10 years ago showing that there were decades worth of, you know, material, enough reserves to fill the need for decades to come in both this area and in the Monterey County area. So there's not really a demand for this. I mean, again, as far as I can tell, this is a question of a landowner who is looking for a way to turn a profit on their land, and this is the way that it looks feasible to them to do it. It doesn't seem to be in response to any kind of like serious demand. We really, really need more of this stuff. They're saying this is the only thing we can think of to do to get a profit off of this land. That's what they want to do. And of course, we believe that the way they can recoup their losses is to sell the land for conservation. But, you know, they feel that they can make more money by permitting a gravel mine. So that's where they're going for it.
Okay, and this is a question for Chairman Lopez. What is the process for gaining federal recognition for the Amah Mutsun? Is it worth pursuing? Is it meant to be impossible to achieve? And are there ways that non-tribal members can support that effort or other efforts of the Amah Mutsun tribal band?
Well, the federal recognition process is practically impossible. In California, only one tribe has been recognized, and that was the Timbisha-Shoshone, a desert tribe. And that was in 1984. In 1978, they developed guidelines on how tribes can become federally recognized. And the Timbisha-Shoshone submitted a 60-page petition, and they received federal recognition. Since then, many other California tribes have gone through the process and been denied. Most recently, our neighbors to the north, Muwekma. One of the tribes, one of the very few tribes that was successful was a tribe from New York. And they were recognized in the past couple of years. It took them 22 years and $88 million to be federally recognized, because there's a lot of politics there, a lot of public relations. You need a lot of lawyers, and it's just horrendous. We're a very poor tribe. People are not standing up and throwing millions of dollars at us for federal recognition. And so I think that it'd be wrong for us to have our members just dream until the day we can become federally recognized to do this or that. We have to plan our future now. And in the future, if federally recognition becomes an option or a viable option, then our tribal members will make a decision then whether to pursue it or not. But for now, it doesn't seem realistic at all.
Thank you. That about ends our time for questions. There were many questions that we weren't able to get to, and I'd encourage folks to go to the website protectjuristac.org to get some of the answers to those questions, and to sign up on the website there and with Green Foothills to be able to stay connected for more information coming forth. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. And again, thanks to everyone for being here. We just have a few announcements and remarks for closing. As Michelle said, you can go to the protectjuristac.org website in order to add your name to the petition. And here we go. Here's the information with links. We're also going to send these links out in our follow-up email so that you'll be able to get that information there. So you can go to the Green Foothills website, sign up to get our action alerts, go to protectjuristac.org and sign up there. This way you can stay informed and stay in touch, and we'll be sure to let you know when there's some actions coming up. And then we do have a couple of announcements to share. So I am thrilled to announce that Chairman Lopez is going to be our honoree at our our annual event, Nature's Inspiration, which this year will be held virtually. And I'm especially excited to announce it's going to feature performances by Neil Young and by Grammy Award-winning band Ozo Motley. So tickets are on sale right now on our website, greenfoothills.org, if you'd care to join us for that. And I think, Julissa, I think you have an announcement from the tribe.
Yes, thank you. So our final announcement is that as of now, we are calling out to artists to participate in the Project Juristac Art Contest. We have extended the deadline for art submissions to August 16, and the winning design will be adopted by our Project Juristac campaign and may be printed on t-shirts, posters, stickers, or bandanas, depending on the type of design. Finally, on the behalf of the Amah Mutsun Tribal Band, Green Foothills, and all of our co-hosts, Dumsan Akanis, thank you all for joining us. We hope that you stay safe and healthy during this time right now, uncertain time, but just continue to support. And I think in conclusion, just land back, right? Give it back. We're ready for it. We're ready to take it on. So thank you, everyone.